To this week's episode of the I Do Crew podcast. This week, Emma and I are talking all things wedding catering, wedding cakes, our favourite subject of food. Um, we love food, don't we, Em?
We do. And I actually was thinking before we recorded this, I should have probably had some dinner because I'm going to be talking about all the yummy food and my stomach's going to be growling the whole time.
Didn't
Extra.
even think about that. Although, should we start with your wedding? I know we've talked about it a little bit before, but about how you even started looking at what your catering options were. How did you decide what you're going to do? How did it all begin from your perspective?
So food was one of the most important things in our wedding. One, because we like food, but two, I had been to a few weddings where I spent quite a lot of the day hungry. And so it made me really conscious that I didn't want anybody to be hungry. And I did see our wedding as a big party, a big like dinner party. So food was high on the agenda. So once we picked our venue, we looked at the approved suppliers that came with our venue. And we had a few conversations with them, a few of them, and we just picked the one that we got on best with and worked out what she could create and we liked from that. So we just used the approved suppliers because I didn't know better. I think now I probably would have looked a bit wider because you don't have to pick an approved supplier. It's just easier for everybody else involved, but probably would have looked a bit wider, but I probably wouldn't have done much different food wise, to be honest.
How did you contact on their recommended list, and then did you sort of narrow it down to your favourite?
Yeah, just by personality though, not by just the one
Food.
that I liked best. You know, we talked to them and I felt safer with that one, so we picked it.
And it didn't matter what menu they had.
No, because they all work because the venue I was in, you had to hire in the kitchen. They had to bring their kitchen with them. So the one we picked had done that lots before. She knew exactly what she needed. So it didn't add too much on the price because she didn't have to source too much. She just sort of brought it with her there because ovens and everything had to come in. And she was really laid back. We talked about what kind of food we liked. She thought that was a great idea. So it was literally just we didn't have a taste test or anything. And I didn't even really know they were a thing. Which
What,
is
they call it? There's a thing that they call it. My mind's gone blank. Where you sit down, like a food tasting.
Yeah, no, I didn't have that.
Bit risky.
It was a bit risky, but like I say, we just sort of went with it. So I'm taking it you had a food tasting.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a story behind our wedding caterer. I was a bit like, oh, I really want sharing platters because I started going down the Robin Hood Prince of the. So I wanted feasting food. So I wanted these big platters on the table where everyone would just help themselves. So I didn't take recommendations from real people. I went onto a comparison website for wedding, which I'm not sure if I would recommend because obviously this story didn't end well. And the caterer came recommended on the site. She had reviews written about her. And In and I had we booked with her, and this was sort of, I don't know, 7:30, 8 o'clock on a Friday night. And it was a really good conversation. Similar, got on well with her. She was a bit eccentric, but really personable. And she kept saying things like, "Oh, I really like you too, and I'd really like to work with you, so we can negotiate on price, we can negotiate on what we do." Um, so, or the concept of having these sharing classes, blah blah blah, we decided to book a tasting with her, and she I think £300 deposit to secure the date, and we arranged to do this wedding tasting somewhere near Twickenham. So we'd driven up, we'd got doggy daycare sorted, we drove up. It was early evening, and I remember it being this really. Imagine if you built a restaurant on the front of your house with like 4 tables, not even 4 tables. I think we ended up sitting on one big table, and then the kitchen out the back, and that was it, with a couple of parking spaces. So it kind of seemed like it was just used, but it also felt like somebody's like dining room. I don't know, but then with like a professional kitchen behind. Odd. That
So
should have been the
it
first.
was it a restaurant?
I
Was
don't
it
know.
like a showroom type, food showroom type situation?
Um, it wasn't very showy. Modern contemporary furniture and interesting ways to display the food, and I don't know whatever else is contemporary. I'm not very fashionable, obviously, but it kind of felt like if you were maybe a caterer, you'd have your professional kitchen out the back and it was quite big, and then you would have like a test run of your restaurant or whatever you want to call it, 5 people that that was kind of the vibes we were getting from the site. She was alone, as I expected. She still looked like the person that I knew that she was going to look like. She again, chaotic, but I just thought she's a chef. Like they're creative. They are. I've worked with chefs before as a waitress, and they are, independent, strong-willed, creative minds. Then the food started coming out quite slowly, but I thought she's in the kitchen. She hadn't really prepped a lot, so she was sort of making it as she went. A lot of food came out that she'd catered for. Then it was just in and I sat out the front. She, the first thing that I was a bit, oh God, um, nip out and take a quick phone call while you're not while you're tasting the starters. Yeah, no problem, that's fine. She's like, oh, actually, I'm just going to nip out for a cigarette. Hope that's okay.
Oh,
Didn't want to lie to you. I'd rather the professional lie than the truth.
yeah. Oh no,
And
that's red flag for me.
and then the whole through the tasting, she had this mug with her. It became clear as we were leaving that she'd been full of red wine the whole time, and she'd just been topping it up as she went, going out for little smokes, and then coming back with red wine, and she just deteriorated throughout the tasting. We ended it by sort of saying, 100% sure, mainly because her behaviour. Can you trust her? Is she going to turn up on the day? I've kind of lost all trust here, but
Drunk.
yeah, she's drunk. I
You
didn't want
don't
to then
want
anger.
drunk catering your wedding, do you?
No, don't want a drunk person catering my wedding. No. So I sort of lost trust. Ian was doing his thing, just sort of firming up next steps. She said, go away and think about it and let me know, which is what we did. Thought about it on the drive home, decided. Called her a couple of days later just to say, I'm really sorry. We're happy to pay for the tasting, but unfortunately, we won't be continuing with you as our wedding caterer. Circumstances have changed, blah, blah, blah. She was livid. She had thought in her mind that she had said to us that we had confirmed, if you leave today, then that's your confirmation of booking me for the wedding.
If not, I'm gonna
Unless
hold you hostage.
unless say no right now. Okay, crazy.
That's not even a normal thing, is it? You have to give people grace to make a decision outside of being in your living room while you're drinking. So,
And smoking. And not that there's anything wrong with this, but when I don't know why, but I think I popped a couple to the kitchen and I saw that she'd got her there was like this dry cured bacon that she'd chopped up on top of pieces, which I thought she'd done herself, but no, she'd bought that from Co-op, chopped it up with scissors and just sprinkled it on the top. I don't want to see that. I want to see the illusion. So
yeah.
that was wedding caterer number one.
Oh no.
Then I obviously I was scared after that because I didn't know where this could end. We basically went with wedding caterer number two, and yes, we did do a tasting, and that's every other Wednesday because it's Pete House. That's what we call it. So every other week is a wedding tasting, and she was so good, obviously, because we knew her for like the last sort of 2 years, probably up until the wedding. She was going to do our canapes. She was also going to do sharing antipasti boards on the tables as starters. Then she was going to do pizza buffet and pasta salads. And it all came out at such a reasonable price that Ian and I thought she'd got it wrong. So we asked her to check her pricing just to double check that everything that we had said she'd captured. Yeah, we catered for 80 people and it came in under 2,500.
That's amazing. And there was a lot of food too. It wasn't like she'd given small portions because of the pricing or anything. There was a lot of food, and at the end, because you kind of, we sat round, didn't we, and we had our antipasties, and there was a board per table, and they were continually filling it up with bread as it went down. And then it was like more like a pizza buffet style, wasn't it, where you could get a few slices of all the different flavors. And there was so much pizza left at the end that she was just continually making the pizzas in the van until people stopped eating. So you could really have your fill. You weren't like half a pizza each, and then she just kept making them. It was that's an amazing price.
Yeah. And I ended my second day. It was probably like 1:30 in the morning, and I was eating cheesy garlic bread in my bride pajamas, just opening all of my cards. It was honestly one of the greatest moments.
Yeah. The one thing that I really liked about my caterer, the food was awesome. I didn't have much because my dress was too tight. And if you've listened to the podcast before, I kind of missed dinner because I was lying down outside having a little rest. But everybody said the food was really good. But she was really honest. So I had this idea that we had like a roast dinner, and I wanted each table for there to be like a carver. So we'd have like a joint of meat, and there'd be somebody with a little, literally a chef hat on, carving the meat. And she said, yes, that's absolutely great. And then she went back and she started to think about that process, about how she would deliver that. She came back and she said, we can do this, but I just want you to be aware of the things that I think might go a bit wrong here. And it was more about the meat would take ages for them to carve and people would be waiting. She just thought the process would take too long for people, and they'd be sat there, and by that time their veg would have gone cold, and all of that. And so she really thought about trying to make it work, and she was honest enough to say, I don't think it's going to. And that we listened to her, and it worked out really well. We didn't quite have the sort of the thing of all the little chefs standing up, but it was fine because everybody was eating warm food, which was more important. So she was honest with our ideas, and she told us what she thought. She said, I will do it, but I don't advise it. And I thought that was really great, because I think a lot of people would, because then they don't have to cut the meat, do they, and serve it and stuff. So I thought that was really nice. And we had chili for the evening, and they were like big, massive There was a vegetarian one and a meat one, and there was so much of it. Yeah, so I was quite happy with our choice in the end. But and
Little chefs. It just takes me back to Ian's favourite movie of all time, Ratatouille, as he calls the little rat, little.
little chef, I know, that's it. Bit of, yeah, got them. I was gonna have them little aprons and little chef's hats with like our name and stuff on, but that plan did. I had quite a lot of them ideas, but they didn't all pan out. And what was also really nice was when they were doing the canapes. Often when you're at canapé time, the bride and groom are off, aren't they, having photos taken? And so they produced like a special bride and groom platter that had two of each canapé, and they had one of the waitresses bring it over so we could at least try some of them, because you often miss them, don't you, because you're off having photos done. So, and it had like the special chalk message on the slate that it was on. It was really nice.
Oh, that's nice.
We didn't know that was a thing, but she said she does it all the time because you don't eat otherwise.
Yeah, I like the chalk message. That's nice. So no
No
later then.
regrets at all. Everybody said it was really nice. Sorry, and we had fun with our desserts, so we couldn't decide what dessert to have, and so we had a dessert off. So I had eaten mess, so that was my dessert, and Jordan had apple crumble and custard. And you got a little one of each on your dessert. And then the caterer monitored how much leftovers was coming back, and the one with the least amount of leftovers coming back was the winner. I've eaten mess one, so I'm the winner of the dessert challenge.
Did the crumble come with anything? Was it like apple crumble and custard, or?
Crumble and custard. So you had like a little, I think if I remember rightly, it was like a little glass ramekin of eaten mess. And then there was a little tiny sort of shallow dish with a little apple crumble with some custard already poured on. And then, so you had like two little desserts. And they were monitoring which one came back.
I think he shot himself in the foot there because not everyone likes custard.
No, and also it was a summer's warm day. But that's his favourite, and he eats and messes mine. So I'm the winner of everything ever.
Have you ever had any wedding catering scenarios when they've gone wrong? Can you remember? Can you think back? And you're like, oh no.
No, nothing where it's like inedible or anything's gone particularly wrong. I just don't think you get enough food at a lot of weddings, because you've often left your house at 10 o'clock, maybe for a 12 o'clock ceremony. You get two um canapes each by the time that they've gone round, and then you get like a small pork chop with a tiny bit of mash and like some dew thing. And it's just not enough food for the whole day, as well as you drinking, you're on your feet, you know you're doing a lot of talking, and there's nowhere that you can go to like get a snack, or unless you bring like a cereal bar in your bag. But so I just don't think, sometimes some caterers don't give you enough food. You need to soak up the alcohol.
I was talking to somebody the other day who is a wedding planner, and she at a venue, and she said to me that the food was so awful. Actually gone out to get a McDonald's, and when they were clearing up the room that evening, the McDonald's wrappers were part of the clear.
So embarrassed.
Yeah,
As a bride and groom, you'd be embarrassed because you've made the wrong decision, so you'd feel embarrassed. As a caterer, if you saw people like just after dinner going off in their cars and coming back with a Coke and some chips, you'd be like, oh dear, you.
I went to a lovely weddings. I've been to a few, And this was probably the lovely couple. I think we were invited maybe 4 to 6 weeks ahead of the wedding. So we weren't on the original list. That's fine by me because I love a good wedding. So whatever. Um, and this wedding was on a significant budget. There's nothing wrong with that. They had a wedding ceremony in, I'm not going to say what chain hotel, but in a chain hotel because it's an affordable option for those people who are doing their wedding on a budget. They offer really good styling packages. You get your celebrant included, blah, blah, blah. They then had their wedding reception at a really nice barn, and the wedding breakfast was a beige buffet. But because they hadn't, I don't remember any canapes because they went straight into sit down speeches, and I don't remember any canapes. So because people were really hungry, I'm the kind of person I'm just going to wait. I don't want to queue for the buffet. I'll just let everybody go, and then I'll go towards the end when the queue's a bit smaller. Rookie mistake because everybody was starving. So everybody ahead of us had literally piled high their plates of food. So by the time my table decided to get up and go, there was nothing left. Literally like a sandwich here, a chicken nugget there.
Oh,
And then the evening food, the Tesco delivery man wheeled it through the wedding reception at like 5:30. Nothing wrong with doing that. I think it's a great idea because supermarkets like Waitrose, Sainsbury's, M&S do deliveries of catered food, like cold food, which I think is a great idea if you're on a budget because it's super cheap, but also they bring it on platters, so you don't have to worry about plating it or anything. But the Tesco delivery man wheeled his Tesco delivery trolley through the wedding reception. I thought, no, no, you could have used the back door actually.
and actually, there should have been a groomsman, a bridesmaid, somebody spotting that and pushing him right back out and then unpacking it and bringing it in themselves.
Hmm.
Bless them.
Yeah, it wasn't great, and then most people left early too.
Yeah, it's really hard doing that kind of DIY food because what my cousin had a sort of I do barbecue in her house. So we sort of decorated the house, we went to the registry office, and we all came back and just had, a party in her house in her garden. And the groom, who's a really brilliant cook, and his mum pretty much did all of the cooking, and they prepared loads of it the day before. So it was all about just bringing it out and putting it on the tables. And it was one of the hardest things is working out how much you need to cater for. So they had where they live is up north. They have a local baker who makes these huge pot pies. So that was like it was amazing. So, and then so they had one of them, and then they had um, pasta salads and potato salads, and sort of like a really nice beige buffet. And people were picking at that because it was out. People filled up on all of that and kept bringing it out because there was loads of food. Um, then we were like, oh, hang on, because we were actually going to do a barbecue, and he had all this really nice meat that he was going to barbecue with some of his mates. Everybody was full up on all this beautiful sort of salad and everything that we didn't really do the barbecue, and then that became the evening food because there was so much food. So it goes from one, we just didn't know how much to make.
I think too much is definitely better than not enough.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And as is it a buffet, you can't really monitor how much people are taking.
How can you can't police that
No.
because I think they were all starving.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
there we go. You live and learn. They'll probably change their minds next time.
So if you're a guest at a wedding and there's a buffet, don't leave it till the last minute because you
No,
might
don't. You'll regret it, like me.
get
I pulled together a few questions because I thought it would be helpful. So if Em and I did a wedding fair at the weekend, and we were talking to quite a lot of couples who are just starting the process of planning their wedding. And also, a couple of the people that we spoke to have only recently got engaged and sort of finding the whole wedding planning process a bit of a minefield. So I thought I would pull together a few questions. I say a few, I mean, there's 2 pages worth of questions written down here on questions that you should be asking your caterer in those initial conversations. And the first couple of questions, well, the first 3 questions are more about how to choose the right supplier, how to decide on a budget, and how can you trust the supplier. So obviously, do not trust. Go with your gut instinct, I would say, from a trust perspective. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not, which is definitely what Ian and I felt seeing our crazy fake barrister. She said that she was a barrister and that she would take us to court if we didn't pay the rest of the money. I was like, no, no, you're not, hun. No, you're not. I googled you. Um, so yeah, if it doesn't feel right, I would say go with your gut instinct, because most of the time you'll have a good feeling on the suppliers that are the best suit and best fit for your wedding.
Mm-hmm. That goes for any supplier, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that also goes for the right supplier. The right supplier is the best supplier for your wedding and for what you want to do. So ultimately, the fake barrister wasn't the right caterer for me. And actually, pizza van Wednesday is a staple in our house. So it really felt like that should be part of our wedding.
Yes.
So deciding on budget, how did you decide on how much of the budget was going to go into the food?
We were really led by our venue. So our venue helped us quite a lot understand the process. So the venue manager um, sort of helped us understand what we should be thinking about and what we should be paying. I can't actually remember the actual percentage, but it went venue, catering, florist, I think. So we spent the most on the venue, then it was the catering, and then I think it was the florist. But we kind of knew what we wanted. We wanted a roast dinner and we wanted chili in the evening. So, because we were being quite specific, it
Mm.
what it was really.
Hmm. When I did mine, I did my overall budget, what I wanted to spend, what I wanted to spend, the figure I had in mind. Then I added 7K on that because that's the best piece of advice anyone ever gave me. And at the time, I was thinking, 7K on top of that? No way in hell am I spending that, but I did, ish, bit less. And then I sort of guessed on what proportion of that budget would go into what elements, and I prioritized it based on my preference. So I wanted to spend less on the venue so that I could then put more money into the food, the bar, and the entertainment, and then the photographer and videographer, because those are the 2 key things that I wanted to capture the day. And then I wanted to make sure that everybody had a good time. So if everyone's fed and has a good drink and the entertainment is great, it's going to be a good wedding.
Yeah.
And then the catering obviously came in under budget, which was great.
Yeah.
And then we had a bit more to spend on our evening food.
Yeah. I actually forgot about photographer. So it went venue, catering, photographer.
Then I just noted down some questions that you want to be asking your caterer at the beginning of the process. So obviously the first one is, are you free on our wedding date?
Or are you drunk? Are you alcoholic?
Yeah. Are you free? Are you drunk right now? And are you possibly going to be drunk on my wedding day?
Yes. Cool. Thank you.
Will you be catering for any other weddings on that day?
That's a really good one.
If they said yes, I probably wouldn't book them.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't either. Even if they say we've got multiple teams, I'd be like, but which one are you going to be at? Which one? You're obviously the head chef. Which one are you going to be at? 'Cause if you're not mine, then I don't want you.
And how do they decide where they're going to be?
Exactly.
I think from something that you said, have you worked with our venue before? So if they need to bring their own kitchen, it's probably better if they've worked with that venue before, so that they're not like, oh my god, I don't know what to do, and they have to visit the venue and work out what kit they need, what kit's already there, all of that kind of thing.
The thing with that also is not just them working it out, but you don't want to have the last minute charge of them having to hire another oven. Oh, sorry, that's another £600. We've got to hire another oven. Well, that's not really my problem. So if they've worked with that venue before, when they've given you your quote, they know all of that. So it's already included. So you get no hidden.
Although recently, a bride had that experience where they tried to add on an extra 500 quid or something in the week of the wedding because of the similar, oh, we need to actually bring this other piece of equipment. Well, you've worked at this venue before, actually. It's the week of the wedding, and no, I'm not paying that.
No.
He was a terrible caterer. Uh, what are your most popular dishes?
I like that one, Jen. Cook what they're good at.
Yeah,
Yeah. The other one is, what do you like cooking? What's your favourite dish to make? Because they'll put more into it than if you're making them make sausage and mash and they hate it.
yeah, that's a good point. No, another wedding where we're serving sausage and mash.
Like, you can see my class level, can't you? My immediate thought about, oh, sausage and mash.
Um, do you offer evening food? Covering off many bases with one caterer, it just makes your life a lot easier if you're dealing with one caterer than several or two.
Yeah.
Although,
Unless you're having like the vans
yeah, I found that quite easy.
to get a van in for the breakfast and then a van in for the evening. But if it's a kitchen, you don't want them to be having to swap over.
No. I once, one of the first weddings that we ever did as a Lichen and Lights business, mine and Emma's wedding styling and prop hire company, um, I walked into the venue and the family were in the kitchen prepping the food for the following day. I thought, well, I said, what's happening in here? I was just prepping all of the bits and pieces for tomorrow's wedding. I was like, are you catering? Yeah, 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 just to save on costs, we're catering. We're cooking all of the meat at home. We're going to be bringing that in the day. Blah blah blah. So
How stressful.
they weren't calm, that's for sure.
No, and like my cousin, they did it all in their own house, so it was still stressful and it still took them away from their day, but that's what they wanted to do and they were enjoying it. But doing it in a different kitchen and having to ferry food backwards and forwards from a house to the venue and then finishing it off in the venue, and it just has a different vibe, doesn't it? If you're doing it at home, people expect that you might be on the barbecue or something, but oh, I can't even imagine.
I'd love to know. I'd love to know logistically how it all panned out because obviously I only saw the day before with like the panic chopping and washing and blah 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 blah. I only saw that, but the wedding, I saw pictures from the wedding afterwards, and the venue looked stunning, and it was just a really nice, relaxed country vibe wedding. So I can't imagine that they would have been flapping and stressing on the day. I just can't imagine that.
No,
Maybe
no.
I'll ask her and see how it all went. Episode 2 coming shortly. Um, can I see some of your reviews? So I think it's always good to, if you're not being recommended a caterer from somebody who has had them cater an event, you're looking at their reviews online. Also, be careful of those wedding comparison websites because they're obviously a lie. Although somebody did ask me at the wedding fair if I left a bad review on this caterer's on the site on the caterer's area, and I didn't. I just didn't want anything to do with her, but I probably should have.
Yeah.
But just don't use her. Her name's Colette. Moving on. Dietary requirements, are they catered for? And is it a set or bespoke menu? Do they do children's menus? All of that kind of detail about the food that they're serving, I think naturally you'd probably cover off in a conversation anyway.
Yeah. I would the set menu thing is quite be careful. I would just offer a piece of advice to say be careful with that, because if you go into um, a wedding venue that has the caterer on site, you can't pick the caterer, you just get the caterer you're given. They often have set menus, so when you're looking at your venue, read the T's and C's around it, because they don't allow you to veer off the menu. You've got A, B, or C, and you've got to pick one. And then there's a vegetarian option that they just plonk on the side. There's no room for you to be creative, or if you wanted to swap the apple tart for, ice cream, I don't know. They won't let you. It is what it is. So if there's an in-house caterer on your venue, just read the T's and C's. If you want something specific, if you're quite happy just to have a set menu and it takes away the stress, that's great. But if you do have something specific in mind, look at the T's and C's, because you might not be able to have it.
Yeah, that's good advice, because I never read the T's and C's.
Neither do I.
More questions. So do you provide silverware, linen, etc.? Do you have a bar service? So again, trying to tie in your suppliers to as few as possible, because it just means that it's easier to manage. Setup time and servers and point of contact on the day. So that kind of level of detail is something that I really enjoy. And you need to know who the point of contact on the day is going to be if it's not going to be the person that you've been liaising with. When do the final guest numbers need to be provided? Cancellation policy. That was my.
I would just add one about the tasting session. I didn't really realise that was a thing. But I got lucky. We didn't have one, and everything was great. It could have gone the other way. So
Yeah.
maybe ask for one, or what their policy is around that. I think sometimes they do them in joint, don't they? So they have an evening where they invite all the couples they're talking to, and do it like that. It doesn't have to be a private one-on-one thing like your amazing experience was, but just somewhere where you can taste the food before. And
Yeah, and if it looks like they've built an industrial kitchen off the back of their front room, don't go in. This week we're also talking about wedding cakes.
Yummy.
For your wedding cake. I don't think we've talked about this, have we?
Oh, we were lucky enough. So Jordan's brother said that he'd take care of our cake for us as a gift, and he knew one of his friends was a baker. So I just sent her an inspiration picture and just left it over to them. And what arrived was a beautiful cake. Again, just complete lucky.
What did you have? Different flavors? What did it look like? I don't think I've ever seen a picture of your wedding cake.
Oh, I'll share one. It was a tiered cake. I think we had vanilla, lemon, and chocolate. And it was white icing, and it had some sugar flowers on it. Really pretty, quite a simple cake. And it was a gift. So you can't get much better than that, can you?
No. Did you do the whole cutting of the cake,
Yeah.
feeding each other, blah blah blah?
Of the cake, and then it all got cut up and put on the side, and then almost, I think people weren't eating it, so it got wrapped up in tissue and taken away, like party bag styly, like you're at a children's birthday party. But everybody was, when you're a bit drunk on the way home, a bit of cake's probably quite nice, isn't it?
Probably not on the floor of your car, but.
And what was yours? Should we tell your
Yes.
story?
Yes. So I didn't want to spend loads of money on my wedding cake, if any, to be honest. So I called in a favour. Or I can't remember if I called in a favour or if Tyler actually volunteered. I'm not really sure how that. I can't really remember that detail.
Both.
But we decided to have brownies and millionaire shortbreads just so people could help themselves. I didn't want to do cutting of the cake. It's just I don't see the point. I'm not into the whole first duty or task as a woman. It's not for me. Um, and I wanted it to be a bit more relaxed than a official wedding cake because I know they're so expensive. So but so we did that. That was all arranged, and then Tyler was working out quantities for the amount of people. We had a lovely gifted what do you call it? It's like a stacker
Thing.
cake tower. Yeah, that's right. We had that gifted from my sister-in-law's wedding because she bought a really nice one. So I just reused that, so I didn't have to pay for that. But I think about 2.5 months before the wedding, I thought, I do actually want to have a wedding cake. So I decided to get a topper made for the tower, which was carrot cake with frosting. But I didn't want to cut into that cake. I just wanted to have the cake so that the pictures look nice, put in the Mr. and Mrs. or whatever it said, cake topper. I think it said love in like a circle and one of them broke, so we had to get a new one. I mean, it was more stress than it was worth. But then the cake was intact because we didn't have caterers in the evening chopping it up and handing it out because I didn't want that. I wanted to take the cake home and eat it over the course of the next 4 weeks, which is exactly what I did.
This cake is mine.
That's exactly what happened, yeah.
Even went as far as there was no cutlery to even people to attempt
Absolutely
to
not.
have a bit of cake themselves. Was
No.
there?
I was very clear.
You leave.
I was very clear in the appearance of the cake that the actual cake at the top was not to be shared. There was no like big knife lying around. There was no napkins lying around. There wasn't like a chopping board to put it. I just didn't want that. I wanted it all for myself.
Do you know the tradition between the top tier of your cake?
Aren't you meant to freeze it for your baby's christening or something?
It's normally a fruit. It's meant to be a fruit cake, and then you freeze it and then have it at your baby's christening. Yeah.
It will be frozen for a very long time.
I
And I
mean,
also,
has fruit cake these days anyway, do they? And you can't really do that with a sponge.
Ian loves a fruitcake.
Oh, well,
If you ask him, "Oh, what would you like as your birthday cake this year?" "Oh, I'd love a fruitcake." It's May, so no. I make one fruitcake, and that is at Christmas, and the stress of that is enough.
you should say I was more thinking Colin the Caterpillar
Yeah,
or a vanilla tray bake. Which one?
yeah.
On
You
your
pick out of these two options because fruitcake's not on the list. We chatted to one of our supply friends over the weekend, Becky. Her handle on Instagram is at Hartt Cakes, double T. She sent over her tips and tricks on choosing your supplier and a few wedding cake hacks. So I thought we'd hand over to Becky for the next few minutes for her to tell us all things booking your supplier, what she does as her business, and some hacks that she has pulled together for us on those weddings on a budget. Over to you, Becky.
Hi guys, cake hacks for your wedding. So, hey, my name is Becky. I'm a cake artist. My business is Hartt Cakes, and I'm a bride to be of 2025. I'm here sharing my wedding cake hacks for you to use and gain ideas from. So, starting with faux cakes. Most cake artists have many faux cakes to display at fairs, and they keep them in house to show prospective clients. My idea is that you could approach them with your chosen artist to ask to either hire or buy said faux cake for that wow picture if you want the cake cutting photo but you don't have the budget to fulfill for a whole cake to be made. So it could be like a 3-tier faux cake that they have that they'd give you a price of A, B or C on. The cake artist can also supply a kitchen cake, which is also similar to a tray bake, which is one of their cakes that can be ready to be cut out of sight. So you guess or believe that you're having the wow cake all along, but really you're just having their cake, but it's just from the kitchen. It wasn't the one on display. For me, I made you a faux cake and you returned it to me in good condition, the cost of the polystyrene tiers would then be reimbursed, as I can reuse them on other faux cakes. So the process of booking me is basically, as soon as you've booked your venue, it's best to get in touch and fill out my inquiry form so I can check my availability. I'll then send you a second form to fill out for more details on your big day. Don't worry if you don't know all the details there and then, because this can be edited into at a later date for you to tell me wherever your florist is, who your photographer is, all the supply details that you won't know there and then. Step 2 is my next step is to create your quote. This will be sent to you via email along with a contract and a link to pay your save the date deposit. This is a £100 deposit and is deducted from your overall balance. Step 3 is once the deposit is paid, I'll get to work on sketches on your designs and send them to you via email for your approval. This can take up to several months depending on how much work I have on at the moment and if it's wedding season or not. I would say about 4 to 5 months is my sweet spot at the moment, but obviously it can fluctuate during what time of the year it is. We can also have a design consultation during this time, so you send me over your Pinterest board, any ideas you have. I like to not take any photos of cakes. I would rather you send me photos of like your wedding dress, your flowers, the venue, because I like to get the vibe of the wedding rather than saying I want this cake, copy that one, because that's a no-go for most cake artists. So step 4, once you have been sent your cake sketch, you have the chance to approve it. If you don't like it, if you want a few tweaks, there's an option to say, can you change the shading slightly. Once we have set our sights on what cake we're having, I will then check in with you every few months leading up to your wedding, usually on the milestones. We'll celebrate the 100-day countdown, the 50-day countdown, the 6 weeks, and then the 1 week. All that I'll be checking through, seeing that, are you okay? Do you need any help? It doesn't have to be cake related. I helped a couple the other month find their wedding rings, actually, from glamira.com. It's where I got my engagement ring from. Really lovely designs on there. So step 5, which is the final step, this is 6 weeks before your wedding. This is where the remaining balance is due. We will also then finalise any details that are missing, i.e. cake flavours that you haven't chosen yet. I want to know the information of the coordinator on the day if you have one, who is best to contact, because I don't want to be bothering you with silly final details. I'd rather just talk directly to the coordinator or the venue. I'll also then liaise with your coordinator and venue to arrange delivery and setup of your wedding cake, and the florist to finalise any florals that you may be having provided for your cake. I'll also check if they are okay and safe to go on your cake, as hydrangeas carry cyanide in them, so they cannot be placed on cakes, as well as gypsophilia, as the pollen can actually cause a toxic reaction to some people. So I will put the flowers on the cake and make sure they're cake safe to actually go in. But yeah, that is me. A few days after your wedding, I'll send you a lovely congratulations email to make sure everything went right. And then about a month or 2 later, I'll send out a feedback form. This is just so, I get to hear back from you guys and I get to see all the lovely photos of your wedding and see your reactions of cutting the cake. It's really the best part of seeing your reactions, because I don't get to stay there for the whole day. Unless you want to invite me to stay there for the whole day, then I would. Right, thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Becky. That was really, really good. Really, really helpful as well, I think, for those couples who are starting their wedding cake planning process.
I would have never ever thought of getting a faux cake that looks beautiful in the corner and then having your cake more like a tray bake cut up already. I think that is absolutely genius.
And also, if I knew that was a thing, I probably would have done that and also asked them for my very own cake topper to then take away so I can eat that in the same style as the faux wedding cake.
Yeah, I don't know why everybody doesn't do that.
Why does nobody tell you about this?
Because also, when you go to wedding fairs and you see the cake artists, like Becky is her cakes are amazing. And if you can just get her to do a fake one, she'll spend so much more time. She'll be able to spend so much more time making the outside of it look absolutely to perfection. And then nobody needs to know that you're just eating a still lovely tray baked cake.
Yeah.
That has blown my mind.
Amazing, isn't it? I think we'll probably pop her handle so you can have a look at her cakes from her Instagram account on this episode details. But very useful.
Yes. And don't put poisonous flowers in your cake.
Never heard of that either, so I'm glad she's keeping us safe. Oh, was there anybody left some cyanide with their wedding cake? Oh, no, I'm not going to name any names of who I'd like to get back to. And that's this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We're really, really grateful for all the support that you're giving us. Please subscribe, rate, and like our podcast on whatever platform you listen or you watch us on. It's really important. Just means that we can see that you're there and we can see that you're supporting. So subscribe, rate, and like our podcast. If you also want to keep up to date with podcast news, please follow us on Instagram using the I Do Crew podcast handle and send us any dilemmas or questions that you'd like us to cover off. Next week, we're talking all things wedding hacks on a budget. But until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
You've been listening to the I Do Crew podcast with Jen and Emma. Keep up to date with our podcast news by following our I Do Crew podcast Instagram account. Thanks for listening.